Hey everybody. It is currently 3:12 in the morning, Central Standard Daylight Time. I'm here at the ER with my youngest. She was having like febrile seizures. We're sitting here waiting and waiting for results for like a antibiotic, or not antibiotic, like a swab test and a UTI check. And it occurred to me, they took her in, we went in the ambulance from our house at like 1:45 in the morning, and I texted my boss and told him that I'd be able to determine whether or not I will be in to work today. And all I could think to myself is like, as I'm sitting here, it's like, I should not feel guilty for putting my family before my job. And it's a weird thing. It's like we live in a weird society today where you're going to be ostracized. You're going to be condemned for not, putting your family first. And yes, I get it. We work to live, but we don't live to work, like that's the difference in these things. So it's a weird thing. It's a weird cycle, for sure. Hold on a second. Let me position her. So we're sitting here waiting for results, and I'm just trying to think of what it means to be a biblical man, a father, a husband, to be not necessarily like a manosphere type guy, but like a masculine type. Sometimes being masculine is like laying it down for your family and being like, hey, what I want doesn't matter. You can make money anywhere. You can do anything to make money. You don't have to go and clock in for 6 to who knows when. Where was I with that? Sometimes being masculine means laying it all down for your family and putting them above yourself. Sometimes being masculine means putting yourself last. There's so many manosphere things that know your worth, guys. Know that if she pushes back a little bit, kick her to the side, like for your wife or your significant other or whatever. Like that's not conducive at all, We should be trying to live in harmony with one another and like leaning into our biological designs, like what men are hardwired for versus what women are hardwired for. Everyone's so, and this is again, it coincides with like modern society, how everyone wants to be coddled and catered to, and my feelings matter and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, but if you're a dude, like, yes, your feelings matter, but you shouldn't be looking for someone else to pour into you that is not God. God should be the one pouring into you. Your creator should be the one pouring into you. Not your wife, not your kids. Yes, you can find happiness from those things, but, and it's a big but, God is the only one who will pour into you. And will give you that security and that feeling. Like you should be leaning on your creator, because that's the ultimate like divine guidance that you need. And not everyone believes in God. I understand that. Like, place your higher power in there, whatever it is that you believe in. That's where you should be getting your life force and your energy and your drive to want to do more. That's where you should be getting that from. Not from your significant other or another human, because guess what? Humans will always let you down no matter what. They always will let you down. For me, God will never let me down. Never has, never will. And so it's tough to like, yes, you have to provide for your family. You have to work to do that. Or, forage or whatever. I don't know. People don't really forage anymore, do they? I don't know. You have to be able to make things work and roll with the punches and make sure that your family's good no matter what you have to do that. Sorry, it's my daughter. She's wide awake. Well, they determined that she does have a UTI. So that's where the fever is coming from. And the seizures that come with it. Her fever was like really, really high, dude. It was like a 103. It was very scary. My wife woke me up at like 1 o'clock. She's like, get up. So I sat up. I didn't know. Normally she doesn't tell me to wake up like that. It's kind of and she asked me why I panicked like that when she said to get up. It's like, I don't know. I just heard you say get up, so I got up. I got a smiling 9-month-old here with me. Yeah, I know. We'll go home and get you to bed, sweetheart, okay? Yeah. I'm just glad everything's going to be okay, I'm just glad she's all right and it's nothing too major. Right? My son starts school today. First day. I was wondering why they started kids on Thursday, That's when they started me on Thursday. It was like they started me on Thursdays every year. And it's like you get Thursday, Friday, and then you get the weekend to like decompress from your long summer. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to go home. I go lay in bed and go to sleep. I'm so tired right now. I think I got like an hour and a half before my daughter started to have those things going on. Some much needed rest. Weather's changing. It's like super cold out. It feels great. My wife loves fall and I hate it. And as I've been married to her and the more I dread summer, I've come to enjoy the fall quite a bit, especially at night. It's really nice out, like a little bit cool. You can still wear shorts and a t-shirt, but man, I must have been on like an adrenaline kick when we came in here. Because now I'm starting to drag it out. I'm dragging out a little bit. Right. You passed out for a little bit too, didn't you? I don't know. This started out as a political podcast thing, but now I'm just like, I just kind of want to talk about life. Yes, we can cover current events and all that dumb crap, but it's like, I don't see the point in constantly talking about tragedies or what the president's doing or what Congress is doing. It's like that globe is going to continue to spin. Okay? Those wheels are going to keep turning whether or not I talk about it anyway. And just like life's going to continue to go on whether or not I talk about it. It's like I want to be able to kind of like not journal, document like my journey of like what it is to be a husband and a father and to be a working man and trying to be right for the Lord and trying to just, sprinkle a little bit of humor into it too. I don't have anything witty to say right now though. So it's like, Who knows? I think the best direction a podcast can go is just no direction whatsoever. Just talk about whatever you want to talk about. If you want to talk about history, talk about history. You want to talk about life, talk about life. You want to talk about your kids and your wife, talk about that. Talk about your family. Talk about, toxicity in your family. Talk about, not my immediate family. Don't say that. I'm not saying that. Talk about the weather changing. You can discuss current events. You can talk about, anything you want to. A myriad of things. Just talk about whatever interests you. What are you doing? You're goofy. Yeah, I've already told my boss, I said I'm not coming into work today. I'm like, dude, no. Nope. Don't feel like it. And I'm not gonna be made to feel bad about it, like, either. But my wife and I were like struggling to figure out, not really struggling, we're kind of just praying about what up? I'm back. It's been wild. I can't remember if I had mentioned my daughter did have a UTI. They got her on antibiotics. She's doing great now. She also tested positive for neurovirus, which is crazy. But she's been doing all right, ripe old 9 months old. She hasn't had a rough life. I'm not going to say she's had a rough life. She's doing pretty well, but she has, she had RSV like the first week she was born, or while she was the first week of life. So she's doing good now. Everyone's doing fine in our household. I just wanted to kind of touch more on, I've been thinking a lot about, I've had a lot of time to think lately, and I just keep coming back to this whole, there's this pulling at, my heartstrings, or, there's, this pulling at, my soul to, wanting to fulfill that biblical role, wanting to fulfill, this will that God has placed forward for me. And it's for so long, even when I got sober, and I know I talk about this all the time, but I just wanted to continue to talk about it more. Even when I was getting sober, I wanted to do what was right, and I just wanted to survive. And I see so many things now where getting sober, when I got sober, was a completely different thing. It was the time period before everyone got all sensitive. It was 2019. We hadn't excuse me. We hadn't started doing all this gender sensitivity bullshit, pardon me. My bad. We hadn't started doing all this gender sensitivity stuff. We weren't doing where everyone's offended by everything, where everyone needs to be heard, everyone matters. Everyone matters. I'm going to say that. Everybody matters in the world. Everyone matters, of course. Everyone matters. But life is not going to warp itself for you to survive. You have to acclimate. You have to be able to adapt to whatever life throws at you, and you have to be able to overcome it. And not everyone can overcome that. And that's where you need a support system. That's where you may need a higher power. That's where you may need someone who's going to be supporting you or encouraging you in a way that no one else could do it. Me, personally, I don't rely on other people because people just let me down anyway. It doesn't really matter. I get my strength from the Lord, as I said earlier. And that's not for everyone. That's not for everyone. But God, that's all I can say. And I see such a blatant, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm not trying to jump all over the place. So what I was saying is, when I got sober in 2019, it was before everyone got all sent. There was still some sensitivity. Obviously, emotions are high when you go into treatment.
you're dealing with new addicts, newly sober, or like freshly sober, addicted people who are not able to take care of themselves. Emotions are running high. If they feel threatened, they're going to lash out. They're going to have anger issues. They're going to be going through post-acute withdrawal syndromes or symptoms. They're not going to be listening. They're going to be defiant. And that was what I went through as well, like as well as all the men on my unit. Like we had like 30 guys, I think, or like 28. And there were like really high emotions all the time. We got into fights in group. We would argue with each other. We would tell each other to F off. Like we would get into it pretty heavily. But the thing is, like, if we did that, there were consequences. Because treatment is like a precursor to the real world. Because when you're living in active addiction, you're not living in the real world. Now, if you're a functioning addict, that's a little bit different because you're able to hold your job. You're able to do, be around your family. But if you're full-blown dependent on, that drug or that substance or that that bottle or whatever, if you're full-blown addicted, dependent on that stuff, you're not going to be able to go to work. You're not going to be able to be around your family. You're not going to be able to, you're going to isolate immensely, and you're just going to hole up and be a hermit, and you're never going to get that help that you need or that support that you need. So when you go to treatment, they basically give you the building blocks and you have to do the work. They're not going to do it for you. You can go to treatment for 30 days. Here's the thing. I went to treatment as a consequence of probation. I was on probation for 2 years, heavily supervised, because I got caught with like weed or whatever. And I didn't want to go on probation, but that was what they needed me to do. And then so I had to take UAs, and I never pissed hot for meth. I think one time I pissed hot for meth and they locked me up, but the other times I pissed hot for marijuana. That was whatever. I was a heavy weed smoker as well. But where was I going with that? So it was a consequence of probation. I had to go to, they requested that I do a Rule 25 in the state of Minnesota. You go to treatment 30 days and then you do sober living or whatever the recommendations of probation or your counselor would be. Probation officer is in contact with your counselor if you release that information, if you sign a release of information, and that's all willingly. So I signed all that stuff. I told my CD assessor, and this, I've talked about this before. My CD assessor, God bless her, I was friends with her in high school, so we went to high school together, so we knew each other pretty well. And then I fell off after high school, and I went in and I talked to her after the fact, and she asked me like what, and I don't know why. I told her straight off the bat. I said, I'm able to trust you. I'm going to tell you everything that I need to do. And I told her, I said, I need to change. I need to get out of this. And I know I'm going to fight it. And I know I'm not going to want to do it because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of changing. I'm afraid of I didn't think I was going to do better. I thought I was going to die by my own hand when I was in my active addiction. I thought that. I really thought I was either going to succumb to the illness or I was going to succumb to the drugs, and I was just going to die of an overdose, or something was going to happen. But I didn't. So I told her all that stuff. I told her I needed to change, and she set me up with 3 different places. Said I was going to go. I didn't go. I went on the run for like a month, 2 months or whatever, like a month and a half or whatever. And I was supposed to go to treatment in February. I didn't go until April. I spent 12 days in jail before that. Then they sent me off to treatment. And I went to treatment, fully expecting to go back to my hometown, back to my old life. I was like, I just want the building blocks so I can control my use. I don't want to change, I don't want to stay sober. I hate it, sobriety sucks. But then I started to talk to these very wise individuals who worked at this place that I was going to. And I learned very quickly that the thing that I had to do was be honest. I wasn't going to BS my way through it. I wasn't going to lie. I wasn't going to say, oh yeah, well, I was on the fence for the first week I was there. I didn't want to stay. Not a week. It was like the first 2 days. I was like, I think I'm just going to leave. And then if I left, the consequences were I was going back to jail. I was either going to execute my sentence, which was a year, or I was going to go to treatment and I was going to scrap everything. But I thought for some reason when I first got there, I'm like, well, I can just go back to my hometown for 30 days. I don't have to go to sober living. I can just say that I went and I did this. So that's what I did. I went, and I remember this one guy that I met with. I'm not going to say his name. He was like a mental health practitioner, Indian guy, super nice, like from India. He was from India, not Native American. But so he talked to me and I was just like, okay, I wasn't very receptive at first. And he's like, so tell me about your living situation. Where are you at right now? And I said, I'm living with my 80-something-year-old grandparents. I have a girlfriend who has 3 kids that are not mine. And I get high often. And so he just listened for a while, and then he looked at me and he goes, you know what, I'm going to tell you this. And he goes, he didn't say, and he didn't, I'm sure he knew how I was going to react. I kept my composure pretty well for the most part. But he's like, so don't go back to where you're from. He said, let your grandparents live their lives. They're old. You don't need to be a loser. He didn't really say, I don't think he said loser, but he said, you don't need to be bringing them down by living with them. You need to go and live your life. And he said, now this girl, the one that my ex that he's talking about, he goes, is she willing to get sober? And I said, I don't think so. He said, okay, so then you have no attachment to her whatsoever. Those aren't your kids. You have no attachment to her. Let her be. He goes, she will figure her own life out. You need to figure yours out. And I walked out of that office and I was fuming. I was so mad. I was like, screw this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an idiot. He's a dumbass. I don't care. I'm going to go back. And then I think like a week, maybe a couple days later, I sat there and we were sitting in group and I just thought to myself, I was like, you know what? He's absolutely right. He's absolutely 100% right. I cannot go back. I need to be self-sustaining. I need to be able to take care of myself. I need to go and start my life because I'm 25. I have a drug problem and I'm a fucking loser. Okay? That was verbatim what I said. I'm a fucking loser. And I was absolutely a loser. So, fast forward. I don't know why I'm going through my testimony. I just feel like it's something that if you're new here, it's good to hear. It's good to listen to. It's nothing super crazy, but anyway, so I did my 35 days willingly. I felt good. I became a peer. I became like a leader in the treatment center among like the other patients. It's not a flex or anything, but I was there long enough for other people who were coming in to look up to. Like I had to encourage them, this is a good choice. This is one of the best choices we could do because our lives were unmanageable and we weren't even able to take care of ourselves before. Like, and then there were guys in there who had kids and I was like, that's the one thing I feel so blessed about is like, God didn't, give me the ability to have children while I was in my addiction. He waited until the time was right when I was sober and he knew I was capable. Am I the best father? No. Could I be better? Yes, and I'm striving for that. But that's a different story. He gave me the opportunity to like quit being so vain and full of myself and to actually put forward effort to change and to take care of someone aside from myself. And he did that by like giving me my wife as well as my kids, 3 of them now. But it was something that I'm very, I'm forever, anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, I became a peer among, other new patients coming in. And then I got coined out and I was fully like, they weren't going to let me out of treatment. This is what my counselor told me. They weren't going to let me out of treatment if I didn't agree to go to a halfway house or a sober living environment. So there were a couple of options. I had some guys there who actually I'm still very close with on the unit. They said they were going to another place that I'd never heard of. I've been to the town before, but I'd never really like lived there. And so I was like, I went to my counselor and I'm like, let's try this place. And then I went there. I talked to the guy, I talked to the guy who actually became one of my mentors. God rest his soul, rest in peace. Like, he was one of the best dudes ever. And unfortunately, he succumbed to that illness that we as addicts suffer from, and life just got the best of him, and he stumbled, and he's not. It's rough. But so I went there. I think I lived in the sober living environment for like 8 months, and I met my wife. I want to say like the second week that I was there. Yeah, I met her at a meeting, honestly. And I know I'm not supposed to say that, but I met her at a meeting, and the rest is history, man. Like, we got together, and I vowed that I was going to marry her because I was in love with her, and I am still in love with her. She's like the best thing that ever freaking happened to me, dude. My wife's amazing. And she was an addict as well. And now she's a licensed alcohol and drug counselor at the very same treatment facility that I went to, and the one that I graduated from. Like, it's amazing what God can do when you just give up everything. And it's like the best thing about sobriety is, like, you have to be able to, you can't be yourself. You can't be the person that you were in active addiction, because that person sucks, dude. Like, that person's lame. You complain about everything, and everything's everyone else's fault. You're reliant on other people. Like, you're not sustaining at all. You can't take care of yourself. That's one of the best things about getting sober, is like, you start to learn how to, like, the small victories, like getting your own apartment, signing a lease on a car, or signing a lease on an apartment, or buying your own house, or getting a certain job. Like, those are things that normal adults do. Those are things that normal adults do who don't go through that stuff. But the little victories that you get when you get sober after you've been in active addiction for like 10 years, and you've never put your name on a fucking thing, and all of a sudden you're like getting an apartment, getting a car, like you're proud of that stuff. And there are times where I do feel ashamed for being in recovery. I absolutely feel ashamed. That was well, not now. I don't feel ashamed now. I used to feel ashamed. That was when I was like still counting days sober, Now I just, whenever March 17th rolls around, I'm like, oh, hey, there's another fucking year, like, whatever. Cool, I'm still sober, like, that's awesome. But when I felt ashamed before, because I was like, this is actually embarrassing. Like, you looked at it as like a child. Even though that's your own self-perception, that's not something that people actually look at you like. I mean, I've been bad-mouthed on the internet for, people say shit about, like, my teeth or whatever. Like, my teeth are fucked, My teeth aren't great. Obviously from the methamphetamine, but whatever. And I'm too self-conscious to go to the dentist. But there have been, like, if I say something that people don't agree with, they'll instantly go for my teeth. They're like, your teeth are fucked up, go to the dentist. You're a loser. You look like you live in a trailer park. Like, okay, like, but I know none of that's true. The teeth thing, probably. But there was one woman in particular, I told her, I was like, she's like, yeah, your teeth are all fucked up. You're a loser. And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, methamphetamine is a hell of a drug. And she goes, I would never use that because I'm not retarded. It's like, oh, wow, that's cool. Like, just obviously using the lowest of low blows to try to, like, offend me in some way, shape, or form. But it's like, you have to basically just let that shit slide off your back. It's like, who cares, man? You got to be proud of yourself. Like, and if you're listening to this, and if you're in active addiction, like, you can do this. But you have to want to do this. And I feel like a broken record because I say this almost every episode. Like, you have to be able to, like, change that. You have to want that. And am I going to say that, relapse is part of recovery? No, I'm not going to say that. I mean, am I going to say that fully being abstinent is the only way to go? No. Do your recovery the way you want to. Like, get off the shit that's fucking up your life completely and double down on all of that and just walk away from that stuff. If it keeps you, listen, here's the thing, if smoking weed or drinking keeps you away from like sticking a needle in your arm, by all means do what you gotta do. I'm not gonna tell you how to live your recovery. I'm not gonna tell you that, I mean, now, this is another stance that I have though, because I don't want to contradict myself somewhere down the line. This is something that I'm not directly dealing with because I don't do this, but so when I started using stimulants were my shit. Stimulants was everything. Like uppers were huge for me. But it started with like Concerta, Adderall, Ritalin, Vyvanse, all that stuff. Narcotics, prescription pills. That was where it started. And then I slowly moved on to cocaine. I moved on to methamphetamine. That's where it kind of like tipped a little bit. So the tipping point was, so I know some people who are former methamphetamine users, and they've gone to the doctor and they've basically said, I have ADHD. Are you able to give me Adderall? Can you give me a prescription? And I'm like, okay, but that's no different than meth. It's just one chemical short of it. It's legal. It's just legal meth if it's prescribed to you. Like, that's all it is. And that's kind of where it gets a little dicey. Because, I'll be the first one to say, like, I'm not advocating for meth at all. But if I were to choose between Adderall and meth, I would choose meth. Because it doesn't give you that, like, Adderall gives you, like, that weird, like, kind of, like, sluggish feeling a little bit if you stay up for too long on it. It like fucks with you bad. Meth, on the other hand, like you keep using it, and then like your day is in, and you feel decent, like you feel normal. But that's also dependent addiction too. But if I were to choose between like a hard street drug and a prescription pill, I would choose the hard street drug any day. But as of right now, I'm choosing nothing, and that's what I'll continue to choose because meth is the one thing that like Adderall, I could you take it and go to work, no big deal. But it shuts down my emotion, and that's the thing. That's what it does to a lot of people. It shuts down your emotion and like mellows you out completely. It focuses you. But then there are people who like abuse it and they use too much of it. And then it's like, what difference do you have between a meth user and a person who is like actually has ADHD? That's where it gets a little racy, like a little bit dicey, a little weird. There are people who will definitely try to go and like move around that, and they'll try to manipulate the medical system to get what they want. I mean, there's tons of people that do it. You don't have to be a stimulant user or anyone in recovery to do that. Like, there's people who do that with like back pills and like opiates and shit like that. But I don't know. I think that once you're moving on to a prescription just to get through your day, like you probably should have just stayed on the drug that you were addicted to. And I'm not trying to say that to be a jerk off or anything, but it's like what you don't really have a difference. It's just now it's legal, so you're like using without consequences, basically. It still does the same thing to your body. Like, it's still going to do the same thing to your mind. It's going to put you into psychosis eventually, because those chemicals, like, you're not meant to take them like long term. You're not supposed to burn out your dopamine receptors to get to, some sort of like feeling of bliss so you can feel normal and you can be a pleasant person to other people. And that's kind of like the escaping reality type feel that I know I went for. And I didn't realize that it was like burning out my brain completely, and I just had to learn to like rewire it with like time off. And I was just like constantly going, and then it was to the point where I didn't feel good unless I was on it. And so I don't know. It's a weird slippery slope, and so where I'm at now is like 6 years sober. What's the date today? Almost 6.5 years sober. My wife just did 6.5 years sober like 2 days ago. But yeah, so almost 6.5 years sober. I really don't even think about it anymore. There are times when I do think about it, and I'm like, as much euphoric recall as like, oh, I love the way that meth used to taste or whatever, or how, blowing clouds or whatever, like all that shit. But at the same time, it's like I like having a job, and I like having my kids. I like having my house. I like having a car and like goals and being able to move forward with my life instead of like sitting in my house peeking out the blinds, worried that someone's watching me smoke a bowl. And that's kind of the craziest thing ever, because it would mess with my perception. Like I would feel like I would be on like the second floor. I thought people were watching me from the next house over, even though their house was lower than mine. And obviously that wasn't the case. No one was watching me. But it's a weird drug. It really fucks with you, like mentally. And I fully, I've fully walked away from it because I'm just over it. It was fun while it lasted, and then it's like, it's actually time for me to just be a fucking adult and move on and just be better than I used to be, because that was a terrible thing. And I know that if I didn't go to that sober living facility and live life with like a bunch of dudes who were doing the same, like were living the same life I was, and being led by the same dudes, and then being led by dudes who were doing the same thing that I used to do, like that, I don't think I'd be sober. I don't even know if I'd still be alive, to be honest with you. And I mean that. It's crazy. Life is funny, for sure. And taking those building blocks, and like I don't follow the 12 steps, but I follow like the first 3 and then like number 10, which the first 3 are like admitting that you have an issue, and then like believing that you can give it up to like God or your higher power or whatever, and just admitting that you are like helpless to it. And then it turns into, step 10 is like taking a self-inventory every day, or like which what that means is you're like at the end of every day, or even, I don't really do it at the end of every day. I do it if I feel like I've wronged somebody. If I wronged anyone, like, I go and I think about it. And I'm like, okay, so what did I do? Did I say anything that was messed up? Was I kind of a jerk off to this person? Was I kind of a douchebag to this person? Or did I say something rude to my wife? And I try to deal with it right away. So then it's like you make amends as you go. And so that's kind of the gist of it, is you try to prevent the bad behavior. You try to prevent the bad attitude that you might have if you're having a shitty day or whatever. Then like I take those building blocks that I learned in treatment, and it's a process for sure. Like you can't just go and try to live the same exact way you used to. Not the same way as in like drugs. Like you can take the drugs out, but then immediately you're just like white knuckling it if you don't change your behavior. If you're still a piece of shit person, like you're still going to be a piece of shit no matter what, drugs or no drugs. And there are some people who just don't change, and then they're just like white knuckling it, and then eventually they go back to it, or they just have a bad day, which is very possible. You can have a bad day, and then like it ends with that, and then you fucked everything up. In a way you kind of messed everything up, and then you got to start your days over again. So it's a weird thing. It's not weird. It's like super rewarding. So carry it over into your real world life. And like I try to change, I try to, obviously like having small kids, it's like you're moving them through life. Like you're helping them build a foundation for when they go into the real world, obviously once they move out of your house. And then like you need to teach them how to be like adults. So like we're like in the process right now, like my wife and I, obviously after the pandemic, my son was born right at the beginning of the pandemic, and then it really hasn't stopped since then. My 2 daughters were born, but there was no like eating in for a while. Like at restaurants, there was no eating in. Like you had to go and order it and then take out. Now that there's open dining again, my wife and I make it a point to bring our kids in so we can show them like how they're supposed to act. Like you can't scream and pull like decorative vases off the counter next to us just because you're bored. Like you need to sit there, and then we need to like keep you entertained without iPads, without screens, without all that shit. Like we're trying to shy away from screens because it's like a very good pacifier, and it causes a lot of things in kids, like not high levels of like autism or anything like that, but that's a whole separate issue. It causes like, I can't remember the term for it. it does something to their brain chemistry, where if you're addicted to a screen and you're on a screen all day, like it messes with you, especially at that developmental point in their lives. Like my son's 5, my daughter's 3, and my youngest is 9 months, obviously. So my 9-month-old, like, she isn't really like addicted to a screen. So there's like this test that we learned to do, and I don't know if it's legit or not, but we did it, where you hold your kid upside down, like you hold, like, remember when we were like kids? Obviously, if you're like 30 or like 20 something, you understand this. Maybe older, you understand this. Like when your parents used to hold you, or your aunts or your uncles used to hold you by your legs, and they would like hold you upside down, and you would just like swing, and they would swing you back and forth, and you'd like, the blood would go to your head, and you'd be like laughing or whatever. But the thing is, like, the one thing we tried is, like, the one guy, this guy on a video said, again, I don't know how true this is. He said if you tip your child upside down and like they like try to fight it, or they freak out, that's like a sign of like screen addiction, or like levels of autism that are traced. So we did that with my son and my daughter. My son says he likes it, but he freaks out when you hold him upside down. My daughter hates it. So I'll sneak it every now and then. Like I think we were at like a restaurant recently, and I picked up my daughter and I held her upside down, and she freaked, like she got mad at me or whatever. But it's like but again, like they'd never been held like that before, so I wonder if that's part of it too. I don't want to like trace it, but we're taking the steps we possibly can if it is like screen addiction, because we know it's not autism, obviously. I mean, we won't know until they get tested for school, but or have evaluations done. But like like subtly like introducing them to that and like holding them upside down, like they'll understand like it's actually fun, and like we have them and they're not going to be hurt. But another thing that's like tough too, well, it's not even tough. Where was I going with this? I totally lost my train of thought just now. So yeah, like we're taking the steps of like subtly introducing them to like being held upside down, and then we're taking like screen time and we're like minimizing it down to like 1 hour a day. And it's not going to be, obviously with the exception of weekends, but we go and do more fun stuff on the weekends. And we're trying to like fill our days more with like activities like coloring and Play-Doh and all that stuff, or whatever, whatever kids like to do now. We're just trying to cut screen time down because it really does do a number on people. And it even does a number on us. Like the whole blue light thing, it's totally real. Like it messes with your sleep. Like, and so that's why I'm trying to like, one thing that's nice is I'm trying to hold myself accountable. Like this is another thing that also goes with like recovery. Trying to hold myself accountable with like, not necessarily drugs or, but like screen time is like we signed up for this like Snapshot thing through like our insurance, through our like insurance company, where, it tracks your phone use as you're driving. So if you're like on your phone and you're driving, it'll like fuck with your rate really bad. Like it'll mess with your rate. So it's like an incentive to like not look at your phone, which is weird. And then like to drive safe. But it also does track where you go all the time. So it's kind of weird, but at the same time, it goes hand in hand with like, like me getting my CDL. It's like, it's another form of like accountability for like not using drugs, because I can't piss hot for anything, or I'll lose my license. So obviously we're trying to cut screen time down with our kids for like the reasons of, we don't want them to be iPad kids. I've seen videos of iPad kids that are like super aggressive, and they like hit their parents and they scream and they shout. Like if you change the password, there was one guy who changed the password on his brother's iPad. He freaking screamed bloody murder and like started hitting him and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, I don't want to raise monsters like that because it's weird. And it's embarrassing, dude. Like a kid that has no social skills whatsoever and just wants to sit on a stupid fucking iPad all day, or like on a phone, is just crazy. And there's adults like that too, where the blue light will fuck up with your, like it'll fuck your brain up completely. And then you'll go and you'll sit and like you'll have trouble falling asleep, or you'll have trouble, interacting with people unless you're like interacting online. There are people who are way more social online than they are like in person. And it's weird. So like, again, I'll bring this all back. So leading into a biblical role is is, and that's really the only way I can put it, because I don't want to say like leading into a masculine role, because there's so much like toxicity out there on social media right now where, men, you need to know your worth. You need to know that your feelings matter. Like, yeah, your feelings matter, but you don't get to be a dickhead, you know, to women or a woman in your life just because like she's not, you know. Women are like the weak, and this is, again, if you're a woman and you're listening to this isn't me like dogging on you. If you're a man and you're listening, I'm not dogging on you. Like, I'm just telling you, like, men, you need to humble yourselves. And that's something that I've really had to like deal with, because I'm very prideful, and I feel like I have felt in the past like I deserve like so much respect, because I've had, like, in my opinion, such a shitty childhood where I only grew up with like one parent, and my mom dated like, you know, a few other guys obviously before she met her, you know, my dad now, you know, and so I was around for that. Like, she was a single parent, and I saw that, and I was like, oh, this is like completely weird. Like, this, you know, it's like new guys every now and then. I mean, they were long-term relationships, but it's like, I don't know if they're going to get married. I don't know if they're going to. And so, backtracking, I'm all over the place with this. I'm sorry. Like, that's kind of crazy to do that, but this is just kind of how my brain works. I felt in the past, and my wife has dealt with this, you know, like we've had to deal with this together. Like, we've had to pretty much, I've had to pretty much lean on like scripture and like, you know, God to take all this crap away from me, because I felt like I deserved so much respect, because I had such a crappy childhood and I didn't deal with that trauma. Like, my father ran out when I was like a year old, you know. Obviously I've forgiven him for that. It's just, there's certain things, there's certain aspects where I do think about it and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I know I'm better off, obviously, because he wasn't in my life. But at the same time, it's like, it would have been nice, you know, if I would have had a relationship with my siblings or whatever. But one, you know, so it's like I demanded so much respect from my wife for certain things, like just stupid things. Like, obviously, like, if I didn't clean up one room and she would like get mad at me, obviously, you know, obviously upset because she's the only one that was cleaning it. And I would be like, you don't talk to me like that. You know, she'd say things to me like, you were raised, you know, how did she put it? Yeah, your mom just like came behind you and cleaned up. And I was like, I would take offense to that. And the thing is, like, I had to understand that I was taking offense to all this stuff because it was 100% true what my wife was saying. So I had to humble myself. And I had to understand that, like, okay, I need to step up as a man. And the thing is, stepping up, pardon me, stepping up doesn't look like buying your wife everything that she wants. Stepping up looks like, you know, so for example, my wife is in school. So she's doing school plus on top of like nursing a baby, taking the kids to daycare, picking them up from school, picking them up from daycare. Like, sometimes it looks like, as a man, it looks like you need to step up and cook, you know, at night for the family because your wife's doing homework. Sometimes you have to do laundry, you know, like, and I remember I had such a tough time with it. I was like, dude, like, I'm not, you know, I'm not a woman. And I would tell her that, and she would be like, well, you can't expect me, and this is what she said, you can't expect me to be like to fulfill a role of a stay-at-home mom if I'm not a stay-at-home mom, you know? So right now we're talking about some things, you know, like my wife and I, like, we're trying to figure out, like, what's the best option right now, especially with things going on in like school systems or whatever, you know, with the shootings and all that shit. It's like, what's the best option for us as a family to move forward? And how can we fulfill God's will for us as a family? So obviously she would get upset about that kind of stuff. So I had to humble myself. Not really humble myself. I had to step up. That's what I had to do. Not humble myself. I had to step up for my family, for my kids. Sometimes that looks like leaving work early so I can go get them to lighten my wife's load a little bit. Sometimes that looks like taking care of them so, you know, so she can get her school done or so she can go take a shower. Like, those are necessities. Those aren't like she's taking a break. Sometimes it looks like giving her a break. So if she's been home with them, like, because they were sick or whatever, then sometimes it looks like me coming in from work, like after working a 12 to 14 hour day, and giving her a break because she needs it, because she's been with the kids all day and she's overstimulated. And the thing is, like, I was so against it. Like, I was so against, like, oh, I'm a man, you know, I got to do this and this and this and this. And it's like, no, dude, you need to step up for your kids. Like, my whole thing before was, like, I was so comfortable just existing and working and not being present, like being present for my kids only at bedtime. Now it's like, I want to be home for my kids. I want to be able to, like, work at the same time. But it's like, sometimes you have to pull from the deep. Sometimes you might need to go get an extra coffee at the end of the day, and you need to, like, give yourself that boost of energy to be there for your kids, to be, like, an involved parent. Because there's so many parents these days, I see them, like, you know, I spent a couple days at home with them where I took them to the park when the weather was nicer, and I saw parents come up, like moms, and they would come up and they would just sit on their phones the whole time. And it's like, what are you doing? Your kid is this little, your kid's like 4. You're letting them play, and you're not even paying attention to them. And it's just like, and I'm not, like, dogging on women who are stay-at-home moms that do that. Like, but the thing is, sometimes you just need to put your phone down. Like, dude, my screen time, the last month, my screen time was like 9 hours a day. That was my average screen time per week. 9 hours. I was like, what the hell? So I've been I've been cutting that down significantly. I'm not looking at my phone. Obviously, if I have a slow time at work and we're waiting on, waiting for the truck to get there so we can load it, like, obviously that's different. But I try not to sit on my phone all the time. I try not to watch video podcasts because it really screws with your, like, screen time. If I'm watching, like, 9-hour-long podcasts a day, that's going to put my screen time up a lot. Like, and I'm not even watching, it's just on. That's why I learned that audio is just as good. Like, you're not going to get the full effect, but it's just as good. So, how did I get to phone use? Why? Gosh. Rhythm with the tism, guys. But anyway, as I was saying, I had to step up, and I had to fulfill that. And the thing is, it is more masculine to do that. To be able to take care of your kids, to be able to give your wife a break, to be servant, to be not subservient, but to serve her, to help her, to guide her, not to you as a man, but to guide her to God, to guide her to something bigger, something better, to pray with her, to be a little less explosive, to be, sometimes that's definitely what it is. You have to just step up, and that may look like humbling yourself. Because right now, this whole manosphere BS crap that's going on right now, where she doesn't pay after, if she doesn't blow me, I'm gonna, split the check or whatever, at the restaurant at the date. It's like, dude, take yourself down a few pegs, pay the full bill. The thing is, you can take your wife out to a nice restaurant, and if you're a piece of shit to her, months leading up to that, you're a jerk off to her the entire time. You're mean, you name call, you're a jackass to her, you call her names, you swear at her, you scream at her, and then leading up to and then you guys finally get a break from the kids, or if you have kids, if you get a break and then you go on a date, then you pay the bill fully, and you tip well, and you get her a nice bottle of wine, and you fully expect her to fuck you. That's not gonna happen, okay? She's not gonna want to be soft to you. You have to set the tone, and that's the whole point. You have to, as a man, you have to set the tone in your household, so then your wife will follow, and then she has a softer tone to the kids, and then they are more prone to listen and to honor you as a parent. And so that's pretty much what it is. As a man, you set the tone. You're the one at the top. Not at the top, but you're the one in your household, in your family, you're at the top. You're the head. You're the head of the household. So you have to set that tone. You can't be explosive and crazy. Sometimes you just gotta and that doesn't look okay, so the thing is, this is where it also gets very muddy, is when you set the tone, obviously stress is going to happen. You're going to have bad days at work, okay? So what that looks like is when you set the tone and you try to like not be explosive at home, if your wife asks you a question about like the roast or something, or like dinner or whatever, and you freak out because you've had just such a bad day. Believe me, I've been there, okay? It's crazy. It's crazy to just fly off the handle at your wife who did nothing to you that day. But so when you are having a bad day and you know like you're gonna have some more, not trials at home, but more like you need to put on a brave face for your family, obviously. So with that anger that you have towards your job, you don't bottle it up. You don't let it fester under the surface. You either pray, whatever your outlet may be, getting that frustration out. If you got to go to the gym and you got to go do like bench press or like shoulder press or just get your heart rate up, like that's a very humbling experience too. If you work out to the point where you're exhausted, like it's humbling. So you have to be able to have an outlet to do something in that short little window of time from your ride home from work to home. You have to have something that's going to be an outlet for you to get all that anger out. You can't just let it fester under the surface, because one day you're just going to snap. And that's implosive anger. Not explosive, implosive. That's like that's like day after day. One of my favorite quotes, and this is a deep pull from like the movie Anger Management with Adam Sandler and Jack Nicholson, is he says there are two types. Jack Nicholson says there are two types of anger. There's explosive and implosive. Explosive anger is the type of person you see at the supermarket screaming at the cashier because they will not take their coupons. The implosive anger is the man who goes to the store day after day quietly. Or wait, no. Is it the cat? No, yeah. I wonder, I might be butchering this, but the implosive anger is the cashier who remains quiet day after day and then finally shoots everyone in the store. And that's like crazy. That's crazy anger. That's crazier than they're both bad, okay? They're both bad forms of anger, but sometimes you just have to be able to like have an outlet, set the tone at your home, make sure your house is in order. And if your wife is frustrated because like she's carrying such a humongous load of getting the kids or breastfeeding, or this is just like a personal experience, like if she's dealing with stuff like that and she comes to you with concerns, instead of you being so for example, if my my wife comes to me and she's dealing with something, she had a bad day, say if she has a bad day, and then it turns into I didn't clean up, so then I start getting the back burner, I start getting put on the grill, and that's where instead of me being defensive and being, well, you never do this, you never do that, instead of me being reactive and ultimately up on defense, instead of me being that way, it's more like, okay, how can I help you with this? And that may look like picking up a rag or a washcloth and cleaning the table. That may look like loading the dishwasher. That may look like taking the garbage out, or plunging the toilet, for God's sake. Just do things. Just do. And it's crazy. It's not even crazy. It's just like your life will be so much better. It'll be so much more pleasant and nice and sweet, and your wife will be soft, and you'll be more attracted to each other because you respect one another. That's just one of those things, man. I'm not saying do it all for sex, because that's not what I'm saying, but that's part of it. When you're married, you got to be able to go to your marriage bed, and you got to be able to honor your marriage. And it's an amazing thing. It's beautiful. It's something that God granted us through marriage. And I know that marriage is not a big thing now where everyone's be stuck with one person for the rest of your life, or happy wife, happy life. No, like, how about happy spouse, happy house? That's a better one. So you got to be able to, like, pray for each other. You got to be able to pray with each other. You got to be able to humble yourself, step up and be a man. And that's not like, the thing is, like, the whole viewpoint of being a man now is here's the thing, you have to get offline. If you want to do this, if you want to be able to do this, like, for real, you want to be able to, like, be a better husband or a better man, like, or a better father, you have to get offline. Because there are going to be people who tell you, like, you're going to get bad advice from every direction. You're going to get bad advice from feminists. You're going to get bad advice from toxic masculine dudes, like, or masculine dudes who are, like, part of the manosphere, like, what's his name? Andrew Tate. Like, you got to be able to, like, look into yourself and look into what you believe and just say to yourself, like, okay, so how can I make this better? How can I actually do this? You know, and that's going to be the whole tipping point for you being a better person. And it's like, I thought I could just exist, you know, and that's true. I thought I could just exist in my marriage and exist in sobriety without, like, changing who I was. It's like, you actually can't do that. You have to be able to, like, be better than you were yesterday. It's all about being better. Now, I know this is a different direction that I took this episode. I don't know, I might delete the whole thing, but I appreciate everyone coming in and listening. This is just, like, real life experiences that I go through, and I try to talk about it, and it's never clicked with me until now. And I will say this, like, ever since, and I owe a lot to, like, I don't want to put it on another human being, but this is a big thing. I think it's, what's his name? Chad Wright. No, I know his name. It's Chad Wright. He went on the Joe Rogan Experience. He's like an ex-Navy SEAL. Amazing testimony. He's totally for the Lord now. And he, someone clipped one of his videos from YouTube and put it on TikTok about being a better husband. And it's like, I took that, and it took one big, humongous fight from my wife and I. For me to be like, you know what? I'm done being a bitch about this. I'm done being a snot-nosed little bitch about this. I'm ready. And I've been married to my wife for 5 years. Almost 6 in January. And it's like, it shouldn't have even taken me this long. Like, it sucks how much of a dickhead I was to her. And I will take it to the grave with me. Like, I will carry that with me all the time. Like, I was not a good husband to her. And I'm working on it. I'm being better. And it's like, just be better. Just build back better. In the great words of Joe Biden. But no, I really do appreciate you guys hanging out. And if this is something you think I should talk more about, let me know. I would love to talk more about it. I don't really know. Politics are freaking boring now. They're kind of lame, and then, like, I can't find the middle ground between conspiracies or going down rabbit holes and politics that are going on now. I can't find that balance between them, because I will lose my mind. If I go through, like, an Epstein list or something, or if I go through, you know, where Tucker Carlson's dad comes from, like CIA, or I look into CIA or FBI and all the messed up things they did, I'm going to absolutely go insane. But I don't know. This podcast is going so many different directions. I know it's hard to keep up. I'm not changing the name. I'm keeping it Political Sanity because I like the name. And AI figured out the name for me. Oh, that's another thing. So, I'll be the first one to say, this is the last thing I'm going to say. We're already over an hour, but this is going to be the last thing I'm going to say. So I went into ChatGPT just for, like, you know, craps and giggles. I went in and I was like, okay, I want to see, because I see this, like, and I was going to talk about this earlier too, but we're out of time now, but I see like a blatant mockery for Christianity. Like, Christ gets mocked all the time, right? Everyone knows that. And the question I had for my wife is like, why? Why does this keep happening? Like, the obvious one is, it's the truth, and they don't like the truth. It shakes some sort of a spirit inside them, or a demon inside them, or whatever. But like this blatant, like, head-on, like this head-first dive into like atheism is crazy for some people. Like, they're so hell-bent. Pardon me. They're so hell-bent on proving that God doesn't exist that they might as well just be Christians, because it's like, okay, God does exist. This whole, like, everything that we look at, like even the veins in your hands or the veins in your body, or the fact that your blood pumps from your heart, like, through your body, like, that doesn't come from nothing. There's no way. That makes a lot less sense than believing in God. Believing in God seems a little more realistic, because, like, okay, we have a divine creator who created us in his image. Anyway, I'm getting so off track here, it's crazy. I went on ChatGPT. I hate AI. I hate AI. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I like to look it up for certain current events where it pulls from different news sources and gives me the information all in one paragraph or whatever. But I went in and I was like, okay, I'm going to ask ChatGPT why Christianity is mocked so much. They said it has to do with like the domination in the West because of the bad things that they've done. And I asked ChatGPT, I know ChatGPT doesn't have any beliefs, but I asked ChatGPT, I said, do you believe in Christ? And ChatGPT said, well, I don't have any beliefs per se because I'm not a human. And so I said, all right, let's play a game. Answer with one-word responses, yes or no. Do you understand? And it said yes. And I said, is Christ the only way? So I asked it before that. I said, is Christ the only way? And it said, well, in Christianity, yes. And I said, okay, now answer in only one-word response, yes or no. Is Christ the only way? And it said yes. And I said, are you programmed to say that? And it said no. And then my wife took it a step further, and she asked, is Christ the only way to eternal life? And ChatGPT said yes. And then she asked, are you programmed to say that? ChatGPT answered no. And she asked, is Buddha the way to eternal life? ChatGPT said no. She said, is Allah the only way to eternal life? ChatGPT said no. And I said, and she also said, is like Satanism the way to eternal life? ChatGPT said no. So I don't trust AI. Okay, I'll say this. I hate AI. I hate it. It's going to get way bigger than we want it to get. We as like humans, as citizens of the world. But when ChatGPT tells you that Christ is the only way to eternal life, I think you better start looking in your Bible. That was weird for me. It was like a weird kick in my soul. I was like, whoa. AI is saying that, AI is always dancing around the whole, well, everyone should feel included and everyone should feel matter, like they matter, or all this. But then you ask it a pressing question like that, and they only give you one word response because you prompted it to, and they're saying, yes, Christ is the only way to eternal life. That is crazy to me. I'm getting fired up. Anyway, that was a fun little anecdote. I like that. So, with that, I'm going to wrap this up. We're well over an hour. This has been fun. I love you guys. Stay safe. Men, step up. Men, humble yourselves. Because your lady deserves it. Your wife deserves the best version of yourself. And you got to lean on something bigger than you to be that person. Anyway, appreciate it. Love you guys. Bye.